The chamber hummed. A reverent silence broken by soft clicks and whirs of diagnostics. Ambassador Grix, obsidian scales shimmering, multiple ocular stalks swiveling, regarded the small, colorful disk before him. His human handler Harper smiled, a flash of teeth Grix found unnerving. "Try this first," Harper offered, her voice light. Sour candy, very popular on Earth. Grix, ever the diplomat, extended a manipulatory digit, a thin, jointed appendage, and delicately picked up the disc. It smelled faintly sweet, but also acidic. He brought it to his primary oral cavity. Sweet, at first, a pleasing burst of fruit. Ocular stalks swiveled. Then, it hit. A wave of pure agony ripped through his sensory apparatus. His scales rippled, a defensive reflex. Salivary glands, unaccustomed to such violence, flooded his mouth with thick, viscous fluid. Sweetness vanished, replaced by a searing, puckering burn that felt like dissolving internal membranes. Ocular stalks retracted sharply. A low, guttural keen escaped his throat. He dropped the disc, thrashing a manipulatory digit to dislodge the clinging torment. His internal temperature spiked. Harper watched, entirely unfazed. "Oh, that's just the sour," she chirped. "Pretty mild, actually. We have some that'll make your teeth feel fuzzy for hours." Next, Commander Xylos. A bipedal creature of hardened chitin, he faced a clear liquid in a tall glass, tiny, effervescent spheres rising. He eyed it suspiciously, then, with a warrior's stoicism, took a deep gulp. His multi-jointed neck spasmed. The liquid, instead of soothing, attacked. Thousands of microscopic explosions erupted against his tongue, palate, esophagus. It felt like internal respiration membranes were aggressively exfoliated. A choked gasp escaped him, chitinous chest heaving. He slammed the glass, a thin stream of foam escaping his sensory vents. It burns," he hissed, voice a distorted croak. And it tries to escape," Harper chuckled. "That's just the fizz. Helps you digest, usually, or gives you a burp." She shrugged. "A basic soda barely registers on the kick scale." Then came the dark, crystalline powder. Instantly, the sterile air filled with a bitter, acrid scent. Cathar, flowing energy within a bioluminescent shell, extended a delicate tendril. He was hesitant, having witnessed his comrades suffering. But humans, so confident, so unconcerned, he touched the powder to his absorption membrane. Bitterness was immediate, overwhelming, like concentrated despair. His internal lights flickered violently, not just taste. A systemic shock, energy currents destabilized, his bioshell vibrating uncontrollably. A jolt, sharp and unwelcome, shot through his being, followed by dizzying nausea. He recoiled, tendril twitching, fanning away particles that clung to his very essence. Harper clapped. Instant coffee powder. Good for a pick-me-up. Some eat it straight when really tired. Gets the job done." She smiled. "Tame stuff, honestly. Wait till you try a real espresso shot." Finally, a bowl of thin, crispy wafers, dusted with white crystals. Grix, somewhat recovered, decided to prove resilience. He picked one up. It crunched, loud and aggressively, between his mandibles. Then the salt hit. Not a taste, but an invasion. Every cell screamed for water. Internal moisture regulators went into overdrive. Yet his oral cavity was an arid desert. Vision blurred from dehydration. A burning sensation behind ocular stalks. Scales felt coarse, joints stiff. This is a weapon," Grix rasped, his voice barely audible. "A slow, agonizing torture." Harper paused, tilting her head. She picked up a chip, popped it in, chewed contentedly. "Nah," she said, shrugging. "Just a regular bag of super salty potato chips. Good with a sandwich, or after a long day." She wiped salt from her lip. "Seriously, Grix, that's the mild stuff." The aliens stared, their agony settling into baffled horror. Humans. The sterile atmosphere of the observation bay felt heavy, oppressive, even before the human, Dr. Eris, presented the next samples. A new contingent of alien delegates had arrived, their curiosity outweighing the horror stories of their predecessors. They looked at the brightly colored, oddly shaped items with a mixture of apprehension and scientific resolve. First, a luminescent green liquid in a narrow can. Eris called it an energy drink. Xylos, a multi-limbed sentient from the gas giant Theron, extended an exploratory proboscis. His species rarely consumed solids, relying on atmospheric nutrient filtration. A single drop, Eris assured, was all that was needed. Xylos's proboscis dipped, absorbed. A jolt, like static electricity magnified 1,000-fold, coursed through his entire neural network. His bioluminescent skin flickered violently, cycling through hues of angry red and sickly green. His multiple limbs spasmed, clattering against the plasteel floor. It wasn't just taste. It was a systemic overload. His internal filtering membranes, accustomed to gentle gaseous exchange, felt assaulted by a concentrated, syrupy acid that buzzed. A low, high-frequency whine, unheard by human ears, emanated from his core. Xylos collapsed, trembling, his proboscis retracting in distress. Dr. Eris merely tapped the can. Huh. Guess you're not a fan of the artificial sweeteners. Pretty standard stuff, though. Good for a long haul. Some folks drink 3 or 4 of these a day. Next, long dark fibrous strips of what Eris described as beef jerky. Ambassador Katarn, whose species possessed an ironclad digestive system capable of processing raw ores, cautiously picked up a piece. It was tough, almost like leather. He tore a small portion with powerful mandibles, chewing slowly, diligently. The salt was immediate. A brutal, relentless assault that bypassed taste receptors and went straight to every nerve ending. His robust saliva glands went into overdrive, then seized, as if trying to produce seawater. The texture, initially manageable, became abrasive, feeling like pulverized glass grinding against his internal oral membranes. Katarn's 4 eyes welled with uncharacteristic fluid. His strong, usually stoic form trembled. He gagged, expelling the semi-masticated pulp, his mandibles clicking erratically. A sharp pain bloomed in his stomach, a searing protest against the hyper-concentrated minerals. He clutched his abdominal plates. That's an attempt at desiccation, Katarn rasped, his voice strained. A biological weapon disguised as food. Eris shrugged, reaching for a piece himself. Nah, it's just cured meat. Keeps forever. Great for hiking. Adds a bit of zing. This is the regular kind, too. We've got some that'll leave your tongue feeling like sandpaper for a week. He crunched contentedly. Then, the sour bombs. Small, brightly colored spheres, coated in what appeared to be fine crystals. Sergeant Vrex, a combat specialist known for his stoicism under duress, decided he would face this challenge head-on. He popped an entire sphere into his primary intake orifice. The initial burst of saccharine sweetness was a cruel deception. Within microseconds, a tidal wave of pure, concentrated, agonizing sourness erupted. It felt like his cranial cavity was being vacuum-sealed, then forcefully expanded. Every sensory pore on his face, usually calm, clenched involuntarily. His ocular lenses fogged, and a strangled gurgle escaped his throat. The burning sensation wasn't just taste. It was a deep, bone-aching ache that vibrated through his entire skull, making his auditory receptors ring. He clawed at his face, trying to dislodge the invisible, chemical torment. He couldn't speak, couldn't scream, only writhed as the sour melted its way into his very being. Eris watched, concerned but not alarmed. Whoa there, big guy. Take it easy. You really went for the full effect, huh? That's just a standard sour candy. The holographic table shimmered, presenting the next array of Terran delicacies. This time Captain Zillar, known for his unshakable nerve in asteroid fields, felt a tremor of true fear. His species, the Vlar, possessed a superior sensory array, designed to detect minute atmospheric changes and subtle energy fluctuations. Right now, it was telling him these snacks were a threat. The first item was a small, orange, triangular chip, Its surface glinted with fine, reddish dust. Dr. Ramirez, the human liaison, held it up with a casual smile. This one's called A. Flamin'. Hot. Chip. Very popular. Good kick. Czar, recalling the earlier horrors, elected for a small corner. He brought it to his primary intake orifice. The crunch was surprisingly violent, assaulting his auditory sensors. Then, the taste. It began subtly. A warmth spreading across his taste buds, not unpleasant. Zoller relaxed, a flicker of relief. Then, the warmth intensified. It wasn't just heat. It was an inferno. A sudden, violent burning erupted, not just in his mouth, but spreading down his gullet, searing his esophageal tract. His internal thermal regulators went into immediate crisis. His multifaceted eyes, usually steady, darted wildly. A sudden, raw pain shot through his abdomen, as if his digestive enzymes were spontaneously combusting. His chitinous scales prickled, his entire body screaming in internal alarm. He gasped, sucking in air, which only fanned the flames, making his throat feel like molten lead. He dropped the chip, thrashing his head, desperate to dislodge the clinging, fiery torment. A small wisp of vapor, almost imperceptible, escaped his primary vents. Dr. Ramirez merely raised an eyebrow. "Whoa! Did you just steam? That's some reaction." "Yeah, it's got a bit of capsaicin. Just gives it a nice burn. Some people put hot sauce on everything. This is a pretty standard chip, though. Wouldn't even make the top 10 hottest." Next, a small, dark cube. It was almost black, solid and utterly devoid of anything inviting. "Dark chocolate," Ramirez announced. 70% cacao. Bit of an acquired taste. Some find it a little bitter. Elder Gana, a revered scholar known for her species, profound understanding of chemical compounds, decided to try. Her race, the Ferrarian, had evolved on a world rich with complex, often toxic flora. She was no stranger to bitterness. She took a sliver. The texture was smooth, then strangely gritty as it melted. The initial taste was intensely rich, almost earthy. But then, the bitterness descended. It wasn't a sharp, quick bitterness, but a deep, pervasive, insidious taste that coated her entire mouth, clinging to every sensor. It tasted like concentrated poison, like the essence of 1,000 harmful plants distilled into a solid form. Her internal filters, designed to neutralize toxins, went into a silent, frantic overdrive, sending mild distress signals to her brain. Her sensory tendrils, usually flowing gracefully, stiffened, retracting slightly. A metallic aftertaste lingered, acrid and unwelcome, refusing to dissipate. Her normally serene countenance tightened, a deep furrow appearing between her primary ocular sensors. This feels like an overdose of a paralytic agent," Gana whispered, her voice uncharacteristically rough. "My systems are trying to reject it as a toxin." Ramirez nodded. "Yeah? That's just the natural bitterness from the cocoa bean. Lots of antioxidants, good for you. Some folks like 90% or even 100%. That's where the asterisks real bitter is. This is just a nice, healthy square." Finally, a jar of small, spherical olive-green items suspended in a cloudy liquid. The smell alone was an assault. Sharp, vinegary, almost chemically pungent. Ramirez called them pickles. Admiral Zylar, a grizzled veteran of countless skirmishes, decided to show his species bravery. He snatched one from the jar. The first bite was a catastrophic sensory explosion. The delegation from the Xylos Confederacy sat stiffly, their multi-jointed limbs trembling almost imperceptibly. Rumors of the Terran snacks had spread through the diplomatic corps like wildfire, tales of internal combustion and sensory overload. Today, it was their turn to face the gallows. Liaison Officer Miller, a human with an unnervingly cheerful demeanor, placed a small, vibrant green orb on the sterile table. "All right, let's start light," Miller announced, his voice booming slightly in the hushed chamber. "This is an atomic sour. A classic. Gives you a real kick." Commander Cathar, a creature of hardened carapace and stoic resolve, extended a prehensile digit. He had faced plasma fire without flinching, but this small orb radiated an unsettling aura. He tentatively placed it in his primary intake orifice. The initial burst of sweet was a fleeting, malicious joke. Then it hit. A tsunami of pure, concentrated acid erupted, not just on his tongue, but come into his very being. His sensory glands shrieked. It felt like his cranial fluid was boiling, then instantly freezing. His mandibles locked, a sudden, violent spasm seizing his jaw. A ringing, high-pitched whine filled his internal auditory sensors, deafening him to all else. His optical stalks retracted fully, his entire head snapping back involuntarily, as if struck by an invisible hammer. He couldn't speak, couldn't cry out, only thrash, an almost silent internal scream tearing through his neural net as the torment refused to abate. Miller watched, a small frown creasing his brow. "Whoa, easy there, Commander. Having a bit of a jaw spasm? That's just the ultra-sour coating. It'll fade. We used to pop these like candy in school. This is actually pretty tame compared to some of the stuff we've got. You're doing great, though." Next, a tall, frosted bottle filled with a bright iridescent blue liquid. "Hypercharge Blast," Miller read from the label. "Maximum fizz, maximum energy." Consolv Rec, a being of flowing gaseous form contained within a transparent biosuit, observed with dread. The previous reports of internal explosions were fresh in his memory. He extended a small, porous appendage, carefully siphoning a single microdrop. Immediately, his internal pressure regulators went haywire. Thousands of tiny, aggressive bubbles erupted within his very essence, feeling like microscopic shrapnel tearing through his delicate internal filters. The contained gases of his being churned violently, threatening to rupture his biosuit. A jolt of electric hyperactivity coursed through him, making his normally placid gaseous form surge and swirl uncontrollably. His entire suit began to vibrate, a low hum of distress emanating from his structural integrity field. He felt nauseous, disoriented, the world spinning in an impossible maelstrom of jittery energy and internal chaos. It feels as though my very atoms are attempting to escape," Verith hissed, his voice distorted by the vibrating suit. And then, the crash. The sudden, inexplicable exhaustion. Miller nodded sympathetically. "Yeah, that's the fizz and the sugar high. A bit much, maybe. But hey, it gets you through the day. Some people drink 3 of these before noon. Just the regular stuff." Then, a small, dark, granular cube. "Pure, instant espresso shot," Miller stated. "Chew it. Feel the focus." Elder Eftar, whose species valued calm introspection above all, accepted the cube with a deep sigh. He crunched it. The bitterness was profound, immediate, a sledgehammer to his refined sensory array. But that was just the beginning. His internal circulatory system, usually a slow, rhythmic pulse, began to race, an erratic, terrifying drumbeat. His multi-lensed eyes dilated wildly, his vision blurring, seeing phantom sparks of light. His delicate nervous system twitched uncontrollably, his entire being vibrating with a desperate, frantic energy that offered no peace, only a maddening, hyper-aware chaos. The chill in the observation room wasn't from the climate controls. It was a cold dread, palpable even to Dr. Anya Sharma, the human liaison. She watched Ambassador Rill, a being of shimmering crystalline facets, approach the table. Ryle's species, the Zalian, processed nutrients through a delicate vibrational osmosis, their internal structures highly attuned to energy resonance. Today's first offering, a small, almost innocent-looking bright green sphere. "A sour worm," Sharma explained, her voice even. "Chewy, tart, real, with a trembling manipulatory filament, carefully touched the sphere. A faint vibration, unsettlingly sharp, resonated through its delicate sensors. Against the Zillion's better judgment, a minuscule particle was absorbed. The initial sweetness was a brief, almost pleasant jolt. Then, a wave of pure corrosive energy ripped through its very core. Rill's crystalline facets began to visibly shimmer, not with light, but with an internal discord, like a perfectly tuned instrument suddenly struck with a discordant, violent blow. Its normally stable energy field flickered erratically. A sharp, piercing pain, unlike any environmental anomaly, resonated deep within its crystalline matrix. Its lower filaments, usually graceful, stiffened and locked, an involuntary spasm freezing them in place. A silent internal shriek of structural distress echoed through its being. Rill listed precariously, its form momentarily losing cohesion before stabilizing, trembling violently. Sharma watched, a slight nod. Yeah, that's just the sour working its magic. It can really get to you, especially if you're not used to it. We used to have competitions to see who could eat the most without flinching. This is one of the milder ones, actually. Some are so strong they'll make your eyes water for a cycle. Next, Chief Engineer Kanex, a multi-limbed organism covered in intricate bioluminescent patterns, faced a tall, sweating can of iridescent orange liquid. Atomic Rush, Sharma announced, holding it up. Super carbonated, great for a kickstart. Kanex, a creature of robust digestive sacs designed for processing dense minerals, eyed it with deep suspicion. He had witnessed the previous fizzy horrors. With a grunt of determination, he extended a drinking siphon and took a cautious, tiny sip. The liquid, instead of soothing, erupted. Thousands of aggressive, microscopic explosions detonated simultaneously within his primary intake sac, causing it to violently expand and contract. Not just gas, but a searing chemical acidity that felt like molten lead pouring into his usually resilient internal organs. His bioluminescent patterns, normally a calming blue, flashed a frantic, angry red, indicating severe systemic distress. His multiple limbs thrashed, involuntarily tearing at the plasteel table. A deep, agonizing pressure built within his secondary digestive sacs, threatening to rupture them. A guttural pain gurgle, unlike any sound his species made, escaped his vocal vents. He fell back, clawing at his abdominal region, his entire body convulsing. Sharma tapped the can. Whoa, big guy. Too much fizz for ya? Yeah, some people get a bit gassy. And that's a lot of artificial stuff. But hey, it really gets the blood pumping. This is pretty standard for a cheap energy drink, though. Nothing to write home about. Then came the dark, crystalline granules, instantly filling the air with a bitter, acrid scent. Strategist Scar, a being of pure intellect with a complex, hypersensitive neural network, observed Kanex's agony with growing terror. He had to prove the mental fortitude of his species. He took a single granule and touched it to his absorption membrane. The bitterness was a physical blow, a sudden, violent surge of raw, overstimulating energy that overloaded his synaptic pathways. His highly analytical mind, usually a fortress of logic, fragmented into 1,000 chaotic thought streams. The silence in the diplomatic chamber was heavier than a neutron star, filled with the collective apprehension of the assembled alien delegates. Their optical sensors, audio receptors, and sensory tendrils were all focused on the human, liaison Mark Jensen, and the small, colorful assortment laid out on the sterile plasteel table. Whispers of digestive trauma and sensory immolation had preceded this session, and the atmosphere was thick with dread. Jensen, oblivious to the terror he inspired, held up a small, vibrant blue tube. All right, folks, first up, Mega Sour Blast. Spray. A real puckerer. Just a spritz. Commander Krelak, a multi-mouthed being whose species communicated through a complex interplay of taste pheromones, extended a hesitant prehensile appendage. His species was renowned for its intricate chemoreceptors, capable of discerning thousands of nuanced flavors. He allowed a single micro-droplet to touch his primary oral sensor. The sweetness, again, was a fleeting malicious lie. Then, a raw, screaming agony erupted. It wasn't merely sour, it was an active, corrosive acid that felt like it was instantly dissolving his delicate taste glands. His primary oral cavity spasmed violently, sealing shut, cutting off the vital flow of pheromones. His complex communication system, usually a symphony of subtle signals, went entirely silent, replaced by a deafening internal shriek of pure chemical pain. His multiple mouths writhed independently, unable to express the horror. Kralak thrashed, knocking over a display stand, his entire body convulsing as his nervous system attempted to override the sensory trauma. Jensen flinched slightly, then chuckled. "Whoa, Kralak! Didn't expect that reaction. Yeah, that stuff can really hit you hard. But it's just a novelty, you know? Kids love it. A bit of a rush. This is pretty basic for us, honestly. We've got some that'll strip paint." Next, a tall, slender can, shimmering with condensation, filled with a clear, sparkling liquid. "Zero fizz limeade," Jensen announced, though a distinct, aggressive bubbling could be heard within. "No sugar, less fizz, supposed to be milder." Consul Velark, a silicon-based lifeform whose internal structure was akin to intricate crystalline lattices processing geological matter, decided to be brave. He extended a crystalline siphon, drawing a small sample. Immediately, his entire internal structure began to vibrate with violent discord. The less fizz was a cruel joke. Each microscopic bubble felt like a tiny, high-frequency hammer striking against his delicate silicate bonds. It wasn't just gas. It was an insidious, eroding acid that seemed to seep into his very crystalline matrix, threatening structural integrity. His normally stoic, towering form shuddered, his translucent outer shell clouding with internal stress fractures. A low, grinding sound, like shifting tectonic plates, emanated from his core. He collapsed, his form threatening to deliquesce into a pile of granular sand. Jensen merely blinked. "Guess the zero fizz wasn't zero enough, huh? Happens. Maybe you're sensitive to citric acid. It's pretty mild for a soda, though, very refreshing on a hot day. Some folks drink this stuff like water." Then, a small bag of whole, dark roasted beans. "Coffee beans," Jensen explained. "Some people just chew 'em, gives you a real kick." Ambassador Zipthor, a psychic empath whose species fed on ambient emotional energy, volunteered. His species found human emotions perplexing, often overwhelming. He tentatively placed a single bean in his oral cavity. The bitterness was immediate, profound, but it wasn't the taste that truly devastated him. As he chewed, a torrent of pure, raw focus energy, intensely concentrated and chaotic, surged into his empathic receptors. It was like 1,000 human minds, all hyper-alert, all driven by a desperate, frantic need for alertness, suddenly screaming inside his head. The air in the diplomatic lounge was thick, not with atmospheric particulates, but with palpable dread. Whispers of previous sessions, of biological systems seizing and neural pathways overloading, had reached this newest delegation. They looked at the human, Dr. Lena Petrova, with a mixture of awe and profound existential terror. Petrova, completely unfazed, held up a small, vibrant blue tube. "All right, folks, first up, a sour potion," she announced, her voice light. "Just a drop. Real zing. Kids love this stuff." Ambassador Xylar, a humanoid with iridescent, thin skin, whose species metabolized atmospheric moisture through delicate epidermal layers, extended a trembling manipulatory digit. He dipped it into the viscous blue liquid. The initial contact was a searing shock. His skin instantly puckered, dehydrating violently around the contact point, turning a sickly white. A wave of pure corrosive acid ripped through his sensory system. A violent internal spasm, like his circulatory system was trying to expel corrosive fluid, seized his core. Ocular membranes retracted sharply. A low, keening sound, almost a sob, escaped his throat as he thrashed his hand, desperate to remove the clinging torment. The very air around him felt suddenly dry, hostile. Dr. Petrova merely nodded. "Whoa, bit strong for you, huh? Yeah, that stuff can really get to you if you're not used to it. We used to drink whole bottles of that after school. Get you going. Very mild, though. Lots of fruit flavor." Next, Engineer Ganath, a small, squat being with multiple, independently operating internal sacs for filtering various atmospheric compounds, faced a tiny packet of shimmering white powder. "This is Fizzy Burst sherbet powder," Petrova explained. "Put it on your tongue. Fun little pop." Ganath, known for his species' ability to process highly stable, slow-reacting elements, scooped a minuscule pinch with a prehensile appendage. The powder dissolved, not smoothly, but into aggressive popping explosions against his tongue. His internal filtration sacs, designed for smooth, slow, methodical processes, were violently overpressurized, swelling painfully. He felt internal tearing, 1,000 tiny ruptures against delicate membranes. His bioluminescence, normally a steady, calming blue, flickered erratically through hues of angry red and sickly green. Gnath fell to his knees, clutching his chest, a frantic clicking noise, a sound of severe internal distress, escaping him. He gasped, his small body convulsing, as the sheer, chaotic internal pressure threatened to overwhelm him. Petrova shrugged. Too much fizz? Some people can't handle the pop, just a little sherbet. Really gets the saliva going, though. Very light, honestly. Some of our candies have even more fizz. Then came the small glass filled with a dark, viscous liquid, radiating a bitter, almost acrid aroma. And for a wake-up call, Petrova said, holding it aloft. An espresso shot. Straight up. No sugar, no cream. Scholar's xylose, a sentient fungal colony contained within a mobile bioshell, whose species thrived on slow, deliberate processing of nutrients and information, observed Gnath's agony with growing terror. Against his core instincts, he cautiously absorbed a minuscule drop through a porous filament. The bitterness was immediate, profound, a shock to his entire system. But the true devastation was the jolt. His neural mycelial network, usually a calm, interconnected web of processing pathways, instantly frayed, sparking with uncontrolled, erratic energy. Growth patterns accelerated dangerously, threatening to overwhelm his bioshell's structural integrity. He collapsed, convulsing, his internal lights flashing chaotically, his normally coherent thoughts fragmenting into a 1,000-fold scream of pure, unadulterated overstimulation. His very essence felt like it was tearing itself apart. Petrova watched, a slight frown. Whoa, xylose! That's just a quick caffeine hit. The diplomatic chamber, usually a sanctuary of measured calm, felt like a high-tension wire humming with unspoken dread. The latest delegation, freshly arrived, eyed the human, liaison Mark Jensen, with a mixture of desperate curiosity and profound existential fear. Tales had spread like galactic wildfire, whispers of digestive systems seizing, neural pathways overloading, and internal organs performing unscheduled self-combustion. Jensen, however, seemed utterly oblivious, a beatific smile fixed on his face as he presented a small, vibrant green object. All right, folks, first up, a sour gummy worm, Jensen announced, his voice reverberating in the hushed space. Classic stuff, chewy, tart. Don't worry, it's not alive. Commander Krathar, a delicate insectoid, whose antennae constantly quivered, sampling the subtle floral nectars of his homeworld, tentatively extended a fine filament. He touched the gummy, a minuscule portion adhering to his sensor. The initial sticky sweetness was a fleeting, almost pleasant sensation. Then, the acid hit. A searing corrosive burn ripped through his delicate antenna tips, causing them to visibly shrivel, turning a sickly translucent white. A violent tremor seized his entire body. His internal digestive sacs, accustomed to gentle absorption, puckered violently, secreting a bitter, defensive fluid. The chewiness, instead of being a comforting texture, made the torment cling, refusing to be dislodged. Kreter thrashed, his multi-jointed legs clicking frantically against the plasteel floor, a high-pitched, almost inaudible whine of pure agony escaping his vocalizers. Jensen watched, a slight nod of understanding. Whoa! A bit much for you, huh? Yeah, that stuff can really get to you if you're not used to it. We used to stretch these and eat, like spaghetti when we were kids. This is one of the milder ones, actually. Very popular. Lots of fruit flavor. Next, a tall, clear glass of aggressively bubbling, unflavored liquid. Just plain old sparkling water, Jensen explained. A slight fizzing sound audible. Super hydrating, super refreshing. Virax, a gelatinous, amorphous being that processed nutrients through delicate osmotic membranes, approached with visible trepidation. He cautiously absorbed a minuscule portion. Immediately, his internal structure revolted. The aggressive carbonation felt like thousands of tiny, internal cavitation explosions, tearing microscopic ruptures in his sensitive membranes. Not just gas, but a sudden, violent osmotic shock as the mineral content aggressively attacked his delicate fluid balance. Parts of his usually flowing, resilient form began to solidify painfully, crystallizing from within. Varax shuddered, its gelatinous form spasming uncontrollably, trying desperately to expel the invading liquid, his entire being vibrating with internal distress. Jensen blinked. "Whoa, Varax! Too much fizz for a plain water? Happens. Some people find it a bit sharp. But it's just water, really. This is the regular kind, too. We've got some that'll bubble your sinuses clean." Then came a small square of dark, almost black, solidified material. "Caffeinated mint chocolate," Jensen offered. A nice little kick and fresh breath. Xylos, a sentient energy field contained within a delicate ceramic shell, absorbed sensory input through embedded biotransducers. He had witnessed the previous caffeine-induced terrors. With a resigned sigh, he allowed a tiny fragment to contact his primary transducer. The initial, sharp, icy mint was an immediate shock, a burning sensation that felt like ice fire on his delicate sensors. Then, the bitterness of the chocolate, followed by the relentless pounding surge of caffeine. His energy core, usually a stable, contained hum, overloaded, sparking violently. Uncontrolled surges of raw energy ripped through his containment shell, making it hot to the touch and causing frantic, erratic light pulses to emanate from its surface. The observation chamber, usually a beacon of scientific curiosity, had become a crucible of fear for the newly arrived delegates. Their multifaceted eyes, optical stalks, and sensory tendrils were fixed on the human, Dr. Eliza Vance, who, with an unnerving cheerfulness, presented the next array of Terran snacks. The rumors of previous delegations, internal distress, had morphed into terrifying legends of edible weapons. Dr. Vance held up a small, hard, glossy sphere, bright red. "First up, folks, a mega sour drop," she announced. "Super sour coating, sweet inside. A real classic. Gives you a good pucker." Ambassador Xylos, whose outer epidermal layer was a semi-permeable membrane regulating precise internal osmotic pressure, extended a delicate proboscis. He had heard of sour. He allowed a minuscule contact. The initial burn was immediate, like acid dissolving his delicate membrane. His epidermal layer visibly puckered and thinned, a painful, localized, corrosive wound forming instantly. A searing internal shockwave, a desperate attempt by his internal osmoregulators to combat the sudden, violent chemical assault, pulsed through his core. His multi-jointed limbs spasmed, clattering against the plasteel floor as he thrashed his head, trying to dislodge the clinging torment. A low, keening sound, almost a cry of distress, escaped his primary vocalizer. The deceit of the sweet inside was irrelevant. The surface alone was an assault. Dr. Vance merely nodded, unperturbed. "Whoa, a bit strong for you, huh?" "Yeah, that stuff can really get to you if you're not used to it. We used to keep these in our mouths till the coating wore off. Good fun. Very mild for us, though. Just a simple candy." Next, Chief Diplomat Qatar, a being of hardened chitin and intricate internal respiratory filters, faced a tall, sweating can of dark, effervescent liquid. It smelled of unfamiliar fermented sweetness. "This is root beer," Vance explained. "A classic soda. Smooth, fizzy." Qatar, accustomed to processing only filtered, inert atmospheric gases, took a cautious sip through his drinking siphon. The liquid, instead of being smooth, erupted violently within his primary intake. Thousands of aggressive, microscopic explosions detonated against his tongue and palate. Not just gas, but a strange, cloying, almost medicinal sweetness combined with the intense carbonation immediately clogged his delicate internal respiratory filters. His chitinous chest heaved, struggling to draw in oxygen as the sticky, effervescent liquid coated his breathing membranes. A sudden, sharp pain, a blockage, shot through his bronchial network. His multifaceted eyes widened in panic, and he thrashed, clawing at his throat, desperate to clear the suffocating internal chaos. The smoothness was a lie. Vance frowned slightly. Too much fizz? Or maybe the sassafras flavor? Yeah, it's a bit of an acquired taste for some. But it's just a soft drink, Qatar. No caffeine. Very relaxing for most of us. This is pretty basic for us, honestly. Then came a small vial of dark, granular powder. Pure ground coffee, Vance stated, for brewing. But some people just eat it straight. Good kick. Strategist Zipthor, whose species possessed an ultra-sensitive pheromone-based communication system, decided to attempt it. He took a minuscule pinch. The bitterness was immediate, profound, coating his delicate chemoreceptors with an acrid, earthy film. But that was merely the physical. As the stimulant absorbed, his entire pheromonal communication system erupted into absolute chaos. His internal glands, usually producing a symphony of subtle, emotional, and informational signals, now violently expelled a torrent of raw, undifferentiated stimulant pheromones. It was like his very emotional core was screaming, a high-frequency, chaotic burst of raw, uncontrolled energy that felt like 1,000 discordant alarms wailing simultaneously. The observation chamber, usually bathed in a calming, neutral light, felt charged with an almost visible tension. The latest alien delegation, their forms varied and wondrous, now shared a singular, profound dread. Their predecessors. Reports weren't exaggerations. They were understated horrors. Human liaison officer Sarah Chen, oblivious to the atmosphere of impending doom, smiled brightly as she presented the first item, a small, impossibly green, chewy object. "All right, first up, folks," Chen announced, her voice echoing slightly. "Hey, Mega Sour Gummy Bear. Don't let the cute shape fool ya, it's got a kick. Just a small bite." Ambassador Kazath, a multi-limbed sentient from a world of gentle, nutrient-rich flora, extended a hesitant manipulator. His species rarely experienced anything beyond mild sweetness or earthy tones. He took a minuscule nibble. The initial burst of sweet fruit was a cruel deception. Then it hit. A wave of pure, concentrated acid ripped through his primary taste receptors, sending searing pain through his neural net. Not just taste, but a sudden, violent spasm seized his entire facial structure. His mandibles locked, his ocular stalks retracted into his cranial cavity, and his internal fluid sacs flooded with defensive bile. His multiple limbs thrashed, involuntarily tearing at the plasteel table, his entire body convulsing as if struck by a high-voltage current. A low, guttural shriek, a sound of profound internal agony, escaped him. Chen watched, a slight frown of concern, then a shrug. "Whoa, Kazath! Guess that was a bit much." "Yeah, the super sour ones can really make your jaw seize up. Pretty common, actually. We used to dare each other to eat the whole thing without flinching. This is one of the milder ones, though. Just a fun candy." Next, Chief Engineer Vilar, whose species processed dense, non-reactive minerals through internal compression chambers, faced a tall, aggressively bubbling can of dark liquid. The smell alone, a mix of artificial sweetness and sharp, metallic tang, was unsettling. "This is Ultra Cola Surge," Chen explained. "Maximum carbonation, maximum flavor. Gets the blood pumping." Valar, recalling the tales of internal explosions, took a cautious, tiny sip. The liquid, instead of passing through, detonated within his primary digestive sac. Thousands of aggressive microscopic explosions erupted simultaneously, causing his internal compression chambers to violently expand and contract, threatening structural failure. A searing, burning pressure built in his core, as if his internal organs were actively trying to rupture. Forced, painful burps unnatural to his species ripped from his intake port, causing his entire rigid form to shudder violently. He collapsed, clutching his abdominal plates, his breathing labored and erratic, a profound disorientation washing over his highly ordered mind. Chen tapped the can. "Too much fizz, Vilar? Happens. Some people find the carbonation a bit aggressive, but it's just a regular soda, really. Good for a pick-me-up. We drink gallons of this stuff." Pretty standard kick, honestly. Then came a small, translucent container filled with tiny white pellets. "Caffeine boost pills," Chen stated. "Pure energy. Some folks just chew 'em for a quick hit." Scholar Zeller, a being of pure thought, communicating through delicate psychic resonance, observed Valar's suffering with rising panic. His species valued mental clarity above all. He cautiously placed a single pellet onto his primary thought receptor. The initial taste was profoundly bitter, but that was overshadowed by the immediate, overwhelming systemic shock. His internal rhythm, usually a calm, steady flow of thought, instantly accelerated into a frantic, terrifying race. His energy core pulsed erratically, sending tremors through his delicate psychic channels. The chamber's cool, recycled air did little to calm the pilgrims of Xylos, a delegation known for their serene, meditative practices. Their multifaceted eyes, usually conveying quiet wisdom, now held a deep-seated apprehension. Whispers of Terran sustenance trials had reached them, tales that defied logic and biological possibility. Dr. Miles Kincaid, the human liaison, a figure of unnerving casualness, presented the first offering. "All right, folks," Kincaid chirped, holding up a small, intensely yellow, oddly textured blob. "This is a super sour squish. It's chewy. Real zing." Elder Real, whose species, the Luminari, absorbed sustenance through a delicate crystalline outer membrane, extended a shimmering tendril. His kind valued purity and subtle energy. He allowed a minuscule fragment of the yellow blob to adhere. The sweetness was instantaneous, a deceptive burst. Then, it struck. A raw, corrosive acid, far beyond any known natural compound, ripped through his delicate membrane, causing it to visibly pucker and discolor. It wasn't just taste, it was a physical dissolution, like his very essence was being scoured. His internal energy matrix, usually a calm, even flow, flared violently, sending searing pain through his crystalline form. Real's lower crystalline facets, usually stable, spasmed and locked, an involuntary tremor seizing his entire being. A silent, high-frequency keening, inaudible to humans, radiated from his core as he thrashed his tendril, desperate to dislodge the clinging, dissolving torment. Dr. Kincaid merely nodded, unperturbed. "Whoa! A bit strong for you, huh? Yeah, that stuff can really get to you if you're not used to it. We used to stretch these and eat 'em like spaghetti when we were kids. Good fun. Very mild for us, though. Just a simple candy." Next, Chief Architect Genax, a being whose internal structure was a complex network of finely tuned sonic resonators, faced a small, brightly colored sachet. "This is Pop Rocks candy," Kincaid explained. "Put it on your tongue, it crackles, it pops." Genax, accustomed to precise harmonious sonic vibrations, cautiously poured a tiny pile onto his primary intake membrane. The powder dissolved, not smoothly but into aggressive, chaotic explosions against his tongue. His internal sonic resonators, designed for elegant resonance, were violently overstimulated, vibrating in excruciating disharmony. It wasn't just sound. It was a cacophony of internal micro-detonations that threatened to shatter his delicate auditory filters. His bioluminescence, normally a steady, calming blue, flashed erratically through hues of angry red and sickly green. Genax fell to his knees, clutching his chest, a frantic clicking noise, a sound of severe internal dissonance escaping him. He gasped, his small body convulsing, as the sheer, chaotic internal pressure threatened to overwhelm his very being. Kincaid shrugged. "Too much pop for ya? Some people find the fizz a bit much." "But hey, it's just candy. Gets the saliva going. Very light, honestly. We used to eat whole bags of these. Imagine what a whole carbonated drink feels like." Then came a small, dark, granular cube. "Chewy coffee square," Kincaid stated. "Real coffee in a chewable form. Gives you a good kick." Navigator Xylos, a sentient nebular cluster contained within a mobile, pressurized bioshell, whose species thrived on slow, deliberate gravitational and energetic absorption, observed Genax's agony with growing terror. Against his core instincts, he cautiously absorbed a minuscule fragment through a porous filament. The bitterness was immediate, profound, a physical blow to his delicate energy absorption arrays. But the true devastation was the jolt. His internal energy core, usually a calm, interconnected web of processing pathways, instantly overloaded, sparking with uncontrolled, erratic energy surges. The diplomatic chamber, usually a beacon of interspecies civility, vibrated with an electric tension. The newly arrived delegation from the distant Cathar collective, renowned for their subtle biologies, I the human, Dr. Liam Kalin, with a collective, profound unease. Whispers of previous encounters, of internal systems convulsing and sensory organs screaming, had permeated the galactic networks. Kalen, however, radiated an unnerving calm as he presented the first item. "All right, folks," Kalen chirped, holding up a small, vibrant green packet. "This is pure sour powder. Just a pinch on the tongue. Really gets the taste buds going." Ambassador Xylos, an Arion, a creature of delicate avian features and highly sensitive respiratory sacs, extended a slender, feathered proboscis. His species processed pure, filtered air, their internal membranes exquisitely fragile. He allowed a minuscule dusting of the green powder to settle on his primary taste sensor. The sweetness was a momentary, cruel trick. Then, the pure, unadulterated acid struck. It wasn't just taste. It was an active, corrosive burn that instantly inflamed his delicate sensory pores. His slender proboscis visibly puckered, turning a sickly white, and a searing pain shot through his entire respiratory network. His internal air sacs, vital for his species, buoyancy and oxygen exchange, violently constricted, causing a sudden, agonizing suffocation. Xylos thrashed, his feathered limbs flailing, a high-pitched, desperate shriek escaping his vocalizer as he gasped for air, his iridescent plumage dulling with distress. Dr. Kalen merely nodded, a slight wince, then a shrug. "Whoa, bit strong for ya, huh? Yeah, that stuff can really make your mouth seize up. We used to snort lines of it in school. Good fun! Very mild for us, though. Just a simple candy. Next, Chief Historian Ganax, a Geodean, a sentient crystalline formation whose internal flow of mineral-rich fluids was meticulously slow and stable, faced a tall, violently bubbling can of lurid purple liquid. It smelled of artificial fruit and chemical sweetness. "This is supercharged grape soda," Kalen explained. "Maximum fizz, maximum sugar, gets you bouncing." Ginax, whose metabolism was measured in geological epochs, cautiously extended a crystalline filament, drawing a tiny sip. The liquid, instead of being smoothly absorbed, detonated within his delicate internal fluid channels. Thousands of aggressive, microscopic explosions erupted simultaneously, causing his internal mineral processing nodes to violently expand and contract, threatening to shatter his crystalline integrity. A searing, burning pressure built within his core, as if his internal lattice was actively trying to rupture. His usually placid crystalline form convulsed, vibrating violently, and a deep, agonizing rumble, like shifting geological plates, emanated from his core. His internal lights, normally a steady glow, flickered wildly, threatening to extinguish. Kalen tapped the can. "Too much fizz, Ginax? Or maybe the sugar rush? Happens. Some people find the carbonation a bit aggressive. But it's just a soft drink, really. Good for a burst of energy. We drink gallons of this stuff. Pretty standard kick, honestly." Then came a small glass filled with dark, viscous granules. "Extra strength instant coffee," Kalen stated. "Pure energy. Some people just chew 'em for a quick hit." Empath Xylos, a Zenithian, whose species communicated through delicate, harmonious waves of psychic resonance, observed Gidengi with growing terror. His kind valued absolute mental clarity. With a resigned sigh, he cautiously allowed a single granule to touch his primary psionic receptor. The bitterness was profound, immediate, but that was a mere prelude. As the stimulant absorbed, his entire psionic network overloaded, sparking with uncontrolled erratic energy,